what was interesting in her situation was there was a lady who worked for her, and this is all in the public domain, and she was taken to court and all the rest of it. But there was a lady who worked for her who used the Horizon scandal as an excuse when she was basically shifting money into her own account. Now, how do you think those type of people who have seen those loopholes and kind of used them to their advantage, how do you think that's affected the way the rest of you guys who are actually innocent and have just been victim to a shitty computer system, how do you think that influences and impacts on the way you guys are then perceived by the post office or the public in general?
There aren't many documented instances of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because those people have kept quiet, shifted to one side and gone off. However, that does not mean they're not there.
Yeah.
The post office have said, and people do say, some people will unfortunately get convictions quashed now that shouldn't be. But how do you
prove them?
Correct. So there are people, unfortunately, employees that have used the scandal to their advantage in examples like you've just given. And but this is where the post office have known about faults in the system and have not rectified them sufficiently enough to allow, whether it be a member of staff, branch manager or whoever it is, to take advantage of the system still.
Okay.
But then the onus and the liability still falls on the postmaster. However, they've still prosecuted the postmasters, even when it's their staff that have taken advantage of the system.
Oh, wow.
So I was talking to a Fed rep recently, and one of them was around this type of instance where the member of staff was blaming the system, saying because of what's going on, it's got to be the system.
It's got to be that, yeah.
And the post office and the branch manager have basically said, well, it can't be because obviously there's cameras and everything else, but it was that the person was being nefarious in what they were actually doing. But then it's going to become very difficult to tell the difference between somebody who's been honest and somebody who's doing it deliberately. So I wouldn't envy being the person.
No, agreed, completely. I can't disagree. Just going back to the first incident that you spoke about this £92,000, they send someone out, they fix the system, and it makes sense. Like, even if I put myself in your shoes at that point, you wouldn't bat an eyelid. You just think it's like when the boiler gets broken, you ring the guy and comes, fixes it, and he goes, right? You don't
switch it back off.
Yeah. You wouldn't ever think twice. Now, do you think it was just luck that you guys happened to have someone be sent out by the post office and fix it? Because
pure luck. Yeah, because pure luck at the beginning. Because when you've heard people from Fujitsu giving evidence and it stacks up that they knew from the beginning there were these issues, there was those issues, they could change things if they needed to, or somebody would come. That type of example is becoming more and more prevalent in people's evidence, where someone has said something and it's them being believed is part of the issue, and then now with more and it's I think the correct I won't say it's disappointing, but the lack of whistleblowers is concerning in the sense that people still feel afraid to come forward and say, right, this is what this line manager was telling us to do, this is how we did it, this is where we did it, and basically coming out and saying that we were told to do things and the people that were telling us to do it. And that's concerning, that people are still not coming out and saying specifically who told them to do what.
Do you also think, though, that is because some of them, like going back to the fact that there were people who were aware there were loopholes, and that, I'm not saying all the whistleblowers are nefarious to a degree. What I'm saying is that considering how hot and volatile the situation is, and people were being convicted for essentially not having done anything wrong, like, who would ever in their right mind want to throw themselves into that? I understand from where you're saying, which is the whistleblower would help put it into context.
I think the initial whistleblower eventually came forward when it became clearer that they'd have the protection of the court. And that's only recently. And I'm
Yes.
talking, I think it was 5 years ago or something. That
Yeah.
person eventually went to court and said, right, this is what happened. It might have been a bit longer actually. And it's only in that time frame. Now, I'm talking about stuff that happened over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
From then, even up till now, there are very few or that have come forward. And even now, with the knowledge and the protections that are available to whistleblowers now,
Yeah, true.
that's the disappointing part that I'm talking about. Because when I think there'll be an element of people feeling culpable and am I going to be blamed? There's going to be part of that, but then equally there should be a part now where people say, right, so it's widely known what was going on, what was at fault, and now it's more of a question of getting the post office to admit what they've done. Because Fujitsu literally threw them under the bus.
Well, yeah, Fujitsu came out, the guy said...
This year, hands up.
Yeah.
They knew that we knew that they knew, they didn't tell you when they knew.
Yeah.
That's basically what it's
yeah.
So Fujitsu have done something right.
Yeah.
However, admittedly 20 years too late.
Yeah.
The post office has still got that attitude that
It's not us.
it's not. I have experience of the current post office CEO.
Yeah.
So he used to be the CEO of NISA, who are our supplier for the shop.
Cool, I understand,
Right.
okay.
So when I see him talking, I know that he is slippery.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he embodies all the bad behaviours that the post office have exhibited for decades. In suppressing people, doing things at extremely slow pace. So he came in, made a token gesture with the first settlement, knowing full well it was underhand in the sense that it was far too small.
Yeah.
Hence why you've now got the subsequent claims going on
Yeah.
to increase the compensation. But the thing that he could and should have done is sped up the payment process and the claim process. And why is it so difficult for somebody to go into the post office, because there's only one shareholder, the government, and say, right, there's my USB stick, put everything on there,
And let's go through it.
and let's go for it.
Yeah.
No one's done that.
No.
Because, unfortunately, this is where the post office have been allowed to get away with it, because they know they've got the backing of the government's funding. They spent, I think the gentleman's name was Lee Cassator, I think they spent about £250,000-300,000 litigating his case to recover 25 grand. Because it's mining your taxpayer money they were using
To get the 25
to get
back.
the 25 grand back.
I see.
And this is where, because they knew they had the weight and they had the might to suppress people, if they came to me and said, right, we're taking you to court, which technically something I said in the other podcast they probably could, but I'm not bothered, because the company that he worked for before sent me a letter and said, if you talk about this, we're going to take you to court. Not this specifically, something else.
Yes.
I said, well, you can take me to court. I've spoken about what's on record facts.